I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet on this day today. Yeah. We can't get started unpacking exactly what's going on until the tubes are working. And so, tubes, connect yourselves. It looks like they're working, which is tremendous. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hang on a second. Let me make sure we're queued up here. Yeah, now we're good. Now we're good. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Govea. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about Donald Trump's indictment. It is finally here. We've been waiting for some time for it to drop, literally fresh out of the oven, and we're going to go through it. It's something like 44 pages. I've got the full thing pulled up here. Let's see how long this puppy is. 45 pages. All right. And so we're going to go through the full thing. I'll tell you right out of the gate, just looking at the charges, weak, very weak. We should be seeing seditious conspiracy in here somewhere. Where's seditious conspiracy? Oh, I don't even see it. Oh, pathetic, embarrassing. All right. So we'll go through it. We'll take a look at what Trump said on True Social. We'll see what Peter Strzok, who banned me on, blocked me on Twitter, had to say about it. Typical FBI agent, just blocking you when they disagree with you, loser. Then we are going to go, after we do some serious analysis on this, then we're going to break down what's going on with Hunty Poo, because the Democrats have this new talking point where they're saying that this is just an illusion of influence, that there was no actual influence by Hunter to Joe. It was all just kind of made up like a magical trick. And this guy, who was the person who got the short end of the straw yesterday, who was forced by the Democrats to go out there and belittle himself in front of the truth, he had to lie to all of us, and he had to repair some of the damage that he did. So they dragged him out in front of the media today, and then he was really trying to make up for his bad performance yesterday. And you'll notice that we are well into stage 5 of whatever kind of delusional episodes these people are going through as they're trying to, I don't know, reconcile what the heck's going on with their president. And we are in stage 5 now, which is where we're seeing them say that the evidence is all just an illusion. And so we'll talk about those different stages. Hopefully they get some help. Jim Jordan, James Comer respond to Devon Archer's testimony. We'll see what they have to say about it. And Byron Donalds had a fun comment on this. And then the big story that we sort of got to yesterday, but that I think is really becoming very clear now, is that Joe Biden is in fact the big guy. I think Devon Archer's testimony is going to confirm that. And this is going to come from the Oversight Committee. They posted for us that Devon Archer confirmed that not my guy, not big guy, I'm sorry, my guy, that my guy is Joe Biden. And I was poking around on Twitter, digging through some of these emails, and there was an email from Hunter to Devon Archer talking about Ukraine and about executing the contract before the visit, not after the visit of my guy right there. So the lines are being connected, and we're asking ourselves what other evidence is there. Gary Shapley, one of the other IRS whistleblowers, says that other people would be more than willing to testify, but they're being threatened and pressured by, the deep state, Joe Biden and the FBI and the DOJ. And so we've got a lot to get to. We are going to spend a ton of time going through this indictment. Actually, I'm not sure how much time. It's not that big of an indictment. Sounds like it's just, 5 charges. So we'll go through it. But this morning, for our members, we had some fun. We talked about this YouTuber named Gonzalo Lira, who is fleeing Ukraine. So we'll have a video on that one coming out. Or if you join as a member, you can see what we covered live this morning. But very interesting story, and some disagreements on this. People have a little difference of opinions on what the situation really involves. He got indicted in Ukraine. We read through a Ukrainian indictment, and he was posting videos that Ukraine did not like. They arrested him. He says they beat the heck out of him. And so he has fled the country, and he is now leaving. So interesting story that we covered this morning. We also talked about this malicious code that is now embedded with American military. And so we talked about all of that this morning. Very interesting development. And we'd invite you to come and join us as a member at either one of our platforms on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come and join us, or Join us on YouTube. No matter where you join us, we appreciate you joining us. We have members-only streams in the mornings. We go through the daily dockets, what's going on with Congress, what's going on with Biden, what's happening in the courts, what's happening with Trump, what's happening with Biden, all the things. We also have a private members-only Telegram group, and we have a brand new website at robertgovea.com. We'd love it if you went over there, checked it out. Here's what it looks like. When you get there, click this reports button. You can grab, oh, we got dark mode. Oh, we got dark mode installed. Woo, how fancy. Look at this. We got dark mode down here. Shout out. Wow, look at that animation. Wow. Shout out to David. Man, he's been working hard on that. So shout out to David for that. Look at that. All right. So that's working right now. robertgovea.com. We've got different reports, and you can check out their reports and read through the news of the day at robertgovea.com. All right. And so, my friends, now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, including the Trump indictment, I have not missed that. I know that is out there and coming. We want to make sure that we're properly fortified and neutrified because these indictments are now just warming up. Sure, you all and we all would like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds, wouldn't we? And we're all sick of the ads for the weight loss pills and the fad diets. You know, we've all been there. We've all done that. They just don't work. And there's some interesting news stories about a lot of them coming out. But we know what does work. And that's eating healthy, especially 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. I mean, that's what eating healthy does. It's kind of a good thing. So let's talk about Field of Greens because it is a science-backed formula. And if you go over there and look at the can, look at the jar, you'll see specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. And it's legitimately organic food. Just read the label. It's awesome. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so we all burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you are going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, you've lost weight, you're looking healthy, you're looking vibrant. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. So let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com, load up your cart with all the health goodies, and don't forget to save 15% off with code Robert when you use that code at your checkout. And there is a lot of good stuff there. And so I'd encourage you to check it out. Fieldofgreens.com, code Robert. All right, now let's get into it. Donald Trump has been indicted on January 6 charges. We've got the full 45-page indictment that we are going to go through in detail and see what some of the reaction is from guys like Peter Strzok, formerly with the FBI. But Trump posted this on True Social, alerting everybody to this fact. Says, I hear that deranged Jack Smith, in order to interfere with the presidential election of 2024, will be putting out yet another fake indictment of your favorite president, me, Trump, at 5 p.m. Why didn't they do this 2.5 years ago? Why did they wait so long? Because they wanted to put it right in the middle of my campaign. Prosecutorial misconduct. And so at about 5 o'clock, a little after, the indictment has been dropped. And we can see exactly what we expected coming out of the District of Columbia, filed August 1st. We know that this dropped on a Tuesday, which is when the grand jury convened. It is 45 pages, United States of America versus Donald Trump. Now, right out of the gate here, we see that there are 4 charges. Conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. Now, it's very curious here. We've covered a lot of other January 6 cases. And one of the more serious charges was seditious conspiracy. In fact, Proud Boys going to prison for that. So are the Oath Keepers. And many of them pointed to Donald Trump as the person who orchestrated the whole thing. And so if they're going to be going to prison, like Stuart Rhodes, for 18 years for seditious conspiracy, and they say Trump was this master architect who was insurrecting the whole country through his dangerous words of fight like hell, or whatever he said, which was inconsequential compared to what the Democrats said, how can they not charge him with that? It's like they charged him with lesser things than the other defendants. But I thought he was the head honcho. He was like the mob boss, they kept telling us. So right out of the gates, I don't see insurrection on here. I see a conspiracy to obstruct. So you're thinking about the obstruction, and then you do the actual obstruction of, and then an attempt. So it's a conspiracy, you thought about it, then you attempted to do it, then you actually did the obstruction. Okay, so we've got like 3 different layers on there. It's like the same crime, just kind of permutated. All right. And then it's a conspiracy against rights and a conspiracy to defraud the United States. Okay, that's it. They've been screaming about this for this long length of time, and we don't even have seditious conspiracy in here. Oh, gosh. All right, let's see. They tell us that the defendant, Donald Trump, was the 45th president of the United States, and he was a candidate for re-election. Trump lost the presidential election. That's what you guys say. Now, despite having lost, Trump was determined to remain in power. Oh, wow, this is going to be like a DOJ thriller novel. Get ready for the worst. So, for more than 2 months following Election Day on November 3rd, Trump spread lies that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the election and that he had actually won. These claims were false, and the defendant knew they were false. And he knew, and that's going to be the subject of a lot of debate, because we've been hearing the news agencies like CNN, MSNBC, all debate this point. That's why they get hysterical every time a new witness comes in, because they say, oh, it's Rudy Giuliani. Oh, it's Sidney Powell. Oh, it's somebody's got inside knowledge. Maybe they're going to be that key witness that tells us this fact. Trump knew. Now, they're going to have to prove this, right? We're just starting at this indictment, but that's a bold claim. So they better have some evidence to back that up as we get through the rest of this thing. But they say Trump repeated and widely disseminated these lies anyway to make his knowingly false claims appear legitimate, create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger. Yeah, Trump did that. And erode public faith in the administration of the election. All Trump's fault. Wasn't like you guys tried to rig 2016 and then impeached him on a fake hoax that caused us to distrust, and your COVID policies and all of the election changes. Of course, there was an atmosphere of mistrust. You guys were censoring us at the DOJ all throughout 2020 and eroded public faith in the administration of the election. That was not Trump's fault. That was their fault. But this is them writing. Trump had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election. All right. So they say he can say that. I would agree. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, like seeking recounts, audits of popular votes, which he did. In many cases, he did pursue these methods of contesting the election results, and we covered a lot of them here. His efforts to change the outcome in any state were uniformly unsuccessful. We know that. And we also know that there was many dismissals based on standing. We know that there were, in my humble opinion, many different egregious violations of the electoral laws because the executive branch was colluding with the courts. The secretaries of states and the judges were exploiting the COVID laws to change the election rules in violation of the legislative power which governs that procedure in our country. So Jack Smith writes, he says, shortly after Election Day, Trump also pursued unlawful means, all right, let's see, of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results. In doing so, Trump perpetrated 3 criminal conspiracies. Ooh. One is a conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, or defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified in violation of the U.S. law. Okay, let's see. A conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede J6 congressional proceedings at which the results were counted and certified, and a conspiracy against the right to vote and to have one's vote counted. So he tried to defeat the lawful federal government function. Let's see where this goes. Jack Smith says, each of these conspiracies, which was built on the widespread mistrust that Trump was creating through pervasive and destabilizing lies about the election fraud, targeted a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, certifying the results of an election, which was grotesquely problematic in 2020. They say count 1, the conspiracy. From November 14th, the election day, all the way till January 20th, 2021. So it's a broad scope here from the election date. Was that the date of the election? No, it was Tuesday, November 3rd. So Tuesday, November 3rd was the election date. So it didn't actually start there. The conspiracy developed after that. Let's go through it. Between that length of time, Trump did knowingly, they say, and this is the mental state, okay, the mindset. What did Trump have going on in his mind? Was he acting recklessly? Was he acting negligently? Was he acting intentionally? Right? Sometimes you wake up and you would just go intend to do the thing. Sometimes you don't want the thing to happen, but you kind of should have known the thing was going to happen, and therefore you were acting recklessly. They say knowingly. So, and this was, we spent a lot of time on this, the mens rea, the mindset. Did Trump knowingly, they say he did, conspire, confederate, he agreed with co-conspirators, meaning there's other people very likely to be charged here, to defraud the United States, that he used dishonesty, fraud, and deceit. The purpose of the conspiracy was to overturn the legitimate results of the presidential election. Here we go. By knowingly using false claims of election fraud to obstruct the government function by which those results are collected, counted, and certified. So let's see what that evidence is. Right? That's a tall standard. Knowingly is Trump saying, I know I lost the election. I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways. Previously here, we've talked about a different standard, which I still think will get them to knowingly, which is a version of knowingly. It's recklessness. If you know that your conduct is so reckless that it's going to cause the thing, you can kind of say that you knew the thing was going to happen. So if Trump was acting recklessly in disregarding all of his advisors, my argument was they could still fit that into the knowingly standard, which would make it criminal. We'll see if he goes there or not. As it reads now, it feels like he's just saying, like Trump, yeah, I know I lost, but I don't care. We're stealing it anyways. That's a tall order to prove. The defendant's co-conspirators are listed here. Among these were, we got some other people who might be charged. 6 co-conspirators. 1, an attorney who was willing to spread knowingly false claims and pursue strategies that the 2020 election campaign's attorneys would not. So who's this attorney? We don't know. A co-conspirator is another attorney who devised and attempted to implement a strategy to leverage the vice president's ceremonial role in overseeing the certification. So another lawyer. And we've got a bunch of names that could be in here. An attorney is co-conspirator 3, another lawyer whose unfounded claims of election fraud Trump privately acknowledged to others sounded crazy. So maybe that's Trump knowing. He's saying, man, that theory's nuts. Nonetheless, Trump embraced and publicly amplified that person's statements. Another one is a Justice Department official, co-conspirator 4, who worked on civil matters and who Trump attempted to use the DOJ to open sham election crime investigations and influence state legislatures with knowingly false claims of election fraud. So co-conspirator 4. And co-conspirator 5 is another lawyer who assisted in devising and attempting to implement a plan to submit fraudulent states of electors to obstruct the certification proceeding, and co-conspirator 6, who's a political consultant who helped to implement a plan to submit what they call are fraudulent slates of electors. We call them alternative slates of electors to obstruct the certification proceeding. Now, I got to point out on this one, look at all these lawyers here. Wow. All these lawyers, just like we came to the same conclusion here, you can have bad legal theories and you can push them forward and you can fight them to the end of the world. You can say, I think my defense is my client wasn't even driving the car. Yeah, that's my defense. That's my theory. He wasn't even driving the car. Can you prove it? Well, I don't know that he did. I don't know that he didn't. That's our defense. That's our theory of the case. We're allowed to make our argument. You can cross-examine our evidence and make your case. But we don't get charged with crimes for that, for using the strategies of our case. We live in an adversarial system. We're supposed to push our arguments as far as possible. And we have a bunch of lawyers who are licensed attorneys who are all looking at these plans and strategies. We got 5 of them. And a Department of Justice official. Okay, 5 out of 6 are in the legal space, and number 6 is a political consultant. So 4 lawyers plus a DOJ official, they all say, yeah, I mean, this sounds pretty good. We're allowed to have alternative slates of electors. If Mike Pence does reject the votes at the outset of this count, then we want this to go back to the state legislatures so that we can see them. And we can review what happened and propose our alternative slates of electors back into the count. It's all contingency planning, which until recently, until this psychotic government has gotten a hold of the DOJ, was a normal thing. I guarantee you, Democrats have contingency plans in all of their elections. They've got lawyers who are filing contingency plan lawsuits before the elections even happen. So this is all normal stuff. And look, it's just lawyer, political consultant, DOJ official. But all of these people are now criminals because they proposed an alternative theory. And this is going to be very curious. I mean, you're going to have a bunch of lawyers. I don't know if these guys are going to join. I don't know if they're going to be charged. I don't know if they've already cut deals or what is going to happen with them. But you could just imagine the trial. You just put every attorney up. No, I thought it was legitimate. Put another lawyer up. You're an attorney, right? You've practiced for a long time. Yeah, you've got a license, right? You've how many cases have you handled? How many courts have you been in? Okay. And you thought it was legitimate? Why? Well, here's why. Okay, how about another one? It's like if a doctor is going to be charged with negligence because he did something wrong, and you got 5 other doctors who all sit there and say, no, I think that's about right. I mean, I think that's what I would have done, and it's legitimate, and there's perfect. Then that doctor shouldn't be in trouble because he was exercising the same standard of care as the other doctors were. Same type of situation here. Now, Jack Smith just says, well, I disagree with all of their opinions. I'm going to substitute my version of what they should have done for theirs. And it's a substituting of a legal conclusion. That's all. But they're charging them with crimes and calling them co-conspirators now for representing Donald Trump. It's insane. They tell us that the federal government function here, the federal government function or dysfunction by which the results for the presidential election are collected was established through the Electoral Count Act, federal act passed 1887, which was highly problematic as they have modified it. The Constitution provided that individuals called electors to select the president. Each state determined how its electors apportioned. Through state laws, each of the 50 states chose to select their electors based on a popular vote in the state. Then they determine how they come up with the votes. Then on a date set by the act, each state's ascertained electors are required to meet and collect the votes. Then the Constitution requires on the 6th of January following Election Day, Congress meets in a joint session for certification presided over by the VP to count the votes, resolve any objections, and announce the result, thus certifying the winner. The federal government function from the point of ascertainment to certification is foundational to the United States, has operated in a peaceful and orderly manner for more than 130 years. All right, so before that, it was a problem. We had another problem with that, right, for 130 years. And then, did they forget the part where it talks about resolve any objections? I mean, we're supposed to have objections. We did. We had Ted Cruz who wanted to go into special session. And there was a possibility, as he's acknowledging, that this process occurs. And Mike Pence theoretically could have said, I don't think these are legitimate electoral count votes because there were massive problems in whatever state. And at that moment in time, all of those contingency plans could have come into effect. But he's just saying you're not allowed to do that. Now, manner and means, they say, Trump and his conspiracy to impair the federal government occurred through the following methods. Trump and his co-conspirators used false claims of election fraud to get state legislators and election officials to subvert election results. They made baseless fraud claims, which, again, are we going to litigate that? I mean, is that what this case is going to be about? Whether there was actual fraud or not? And I would argue that there was fraud in the legal provisions of what the judges did and what the secretaries of state did. So this is a broad, right? This is very broad. Can Trump make any argument that there was any amount of fraud? Trump pushed officials in certain states to ignore the popular vote, to disenfranchise millions of voters, or to enfranchise them, dismiss legitimate electors, and ultimately cause the ascertainment of voting to go in favor of Trump. And to do that, he organized fraudulent slates of electors in 7 states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, which is already prosecuting their slates of electors, which means Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, probably also on the hook. Because not only are the feds prosecuting their political enemies, we also have the state governments. Attempting to mimic the procedures. This included causing fraudulent electors to meet on the day to cast their votes. They said that they were legitimate electors, but they call them fraudulent. We call them alternative. We've already known all of this, and they're prosecuting those people too. So Trump and co-conspirators attempted to use the power of the authority of the DOJ, attempted to conduct sham election crime investigations, and to send a letter to target states, don't know if that happened or not, saying that they had identified significant concerns, using the DOJ's authority as cover, to convene the opportunity to give them cover to create fraudulent electors. They say Trump and his co-conspirators also tried to get Vice President Pence to use his ceremonial role, which is interesting because they've really tightened that up since then. They say that he was encouraged to use knowingly false claims of election fraud to get him to send legitimate votes back to the state legislatures for review, which I think would have been perfectly legitimate and constitutional. And at that point, the state legislatures would have then said, well, we do think that this was a fraudulent problem based on our investigation, and we are going to, because we have the power of the legislative Constitution gives them the authority to regulate the elections, they're just going to declare it and propose their alternative electors. But when that failed, Trump and his co-conspirators repeated false claims of election fraud to the gathered supporters, and they told them that Pence had the authority and directed them to the Capitol to obstruct the certification proceeding. That's a pretty bold claim, too. They're saying Trump directed them to obstruct the certification. Is that accurate? I thought he said march peacefully and patriotically down there to exert pressure on the vice president. And after it became public on January 6th that Pence would not fraudulently, they say, alter the election results, a large and angry crowd, including many individuals whom Trump had deceived into believing that he could do that, violently attacked the Capitol and halted the proceeding. Trump and his co-conspirators exploited the disruption by continuing to levy false claims of election fraud and convince those members to further delay the votes. This is what we've got in this indictment. We know all of this. All right. Defendant's knowledge of the falsity of his election claims. They say that Trump and his co-conspirators made knowingly false claims that there had been fraud. These lies were prolific. Dozens of false claims saying that there were large numbers of dead people, non-residents, non-citizens, ineligible voters. These claims were false, and Trump knew they were false. In fact, Trump was notified repeatedly that his claims were untrue, often by people on whom he relied for candid advice or who were best positioned to know the facts, and he deliberately disregarded the truth. Did you see how that language shifted a little bit? Let's just rewind on that. These claims were false. They say Trump knew, that he absolutely knew, which to me means that he accepted their beliefs and readily acknowledged the election had been lost. But that changes a little bit. They say he knew. Why? Because he was notified repeatedly. Well, that's okay. You can be notified all the time that the claims were untrue. And he might be notified by other people who told him differently. So how do they get inside his mind? Is that the evidence that they've got? Other people notified him? Doesn't matter. All of us get notified all the time about stuff that we don't care about or believe at all. Often by the people on whom he relied and who were best positioned to know the facts, and he deliberately disregarded the truth. No, he disregarded their opinion. He's entitled to have a different opinion. In fact, that's what being the president is all about. They say that Trump's vice president, who personally stood to gain by remaining in office, told Trump he'd seen no evidence of fraud. Okay, Mike Pence, big deal. Senior leaders of the DOJ appointed by Trump, responsible for investigating credible allegations, told him multiple times no fraud. Now, again, this is turning into, this is reading like a reckless mindset, not a knowing mindset. The knowing mental state would say, yeah, I know it's false, but I'm doing it anyways. Yeah, I know that candy bar is not mine, but I'm taking it. This is though Trump had a belief other people are pounding him. Hey, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But he did it anyways, which would be closer to recklessness, but doesn't seem like knowing at all. The director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, disabused Trump of the notion of their findings about foreign interference. CISA, Chris Krebs, one of the least trustworthy people in this whole country, who is now trying to get people disbarred and out of the field because of what they did to support Trump. CISA, whose existence the defendant Trump signed into law, he created them, told him this was the most secure election in history. Days later, director announced publicly that experts were in agreement, and Trump fired him. Chris Krebs should have been fired. That guy is very dishonest, in my opinion. Senior White House attorneys selected by Trump to provide him candid advice informed the defendant that there was no evidence of election fraud and told him his presidency would end on Inauguration Day. So a bunch of lawyers told him differently. Well, but that's interesting, though, because a bunch of other lawyers, as we saw up here, told him opposite. Okay, this was another lawyer who said, no, I mean, this is what we can do. Here's another Justice Department official. No, this is what we can do. Another lawyer and other political consultants. So we have a difference of opinion here. Jack Smith is just saying Trump needed to listen to these people because I like their opinions. But in the same indictment, he shows there's an alternative slate of opinions. Senior staffers on Trump's 2020 campaign, whose sole mission was his reelection, told him he had a 5% to 10% chance on winning the recounts, meaning that he had lost the election. State legislatures, many of whom, okay, so 5 to 10%, that's great. He's got 5%. Sounds great. Yeah, he probably had 5% of beating Hillary Clinton, didn't he? Maybe less than that, and he did it. So who cares about any, this is all judgment stuff. This is like very pathetic of this indictment so far. They better beef this thing up. State legislatures and officials, many of whom were Trump's allies, also repeatedly informed him that his claims of fraud in their states were unsubstantiated. And state and federal courts, neutral arbiters responsible for ensuring even-handed, rejected many of his claims. Yeah, and we wake up today and we know now, the CIA was involved with Anthony Blinken and Peter Morrell to create a fake narrative about Hunter Biden's laptop. So there was a fraud on America there. There was a fraud in the fact that the big tech companies were censoring us at the behest of the FBI. That was a fraud. There were frauds all over the place. Whether those were consequential at this moment in time is another thing. But Trump actually has some facts now to support him as well. None of that was presented to state and federal courts. Doesn't mean it didn't exist. And we had suspicions back then, and Trump had the belief in that now. And I think many Americans are starting to wake up and realize it too. So they say Trump widely disseminated his false claims of election fraud for months. It's getting more and more accurate, more and more right every month that goes by. They say, again, despite the fact that he knew. I disagree. He was told. He was notified. He was advised. But did he know that in his mind? Did he believe that? In many cases, he had been informed directly that they were not true. They say Trump's knowingly false statements were integral to his criminal plans to defeat the federal government and to obstruct the certification. He made these knowingly, again, there it is, false claims throughout post-election time, including those immediately before the attack. Trump insinuated that more than 10,000 dead voters had voted in Georgia. 4 days earlier, Georgia's Secretary of State said that was false. Trump asserted that there were 205,000 more votes than voters in Pennsylvania, but the acting attorney general said that was false. Trump said that there was a suspicious vote dump in Detroit, but they said there was no evidence of substantial fraud. Trump claimed that there were tens of thousands of double votes in Nevada, but they said no, facts versus myth. Trump said more than 30,000 non-citizens in Arizona, and they said no evidence of substantial fraud. Okay, no evidence of substantial fraud. These are all opinions versus opinions. The defendant asserted that voting machines had switched the names, but a bunch of states said no. Okay, so now we've got a criminal agreement. Shortly after Election Day, which fell on November 3rd, Trump launched his criminal scheme. Here we go. On November 13th, Trump campaign attorneys conceded in court that they had lost the vote in Arizona, meaning based on the assessment of their advisors, they say he lost. Trump's advisors said he lost. So the next day, Trump turned to co-conspirator number one, whom he announced would spearhead his efforts. So Trump changes lawyers. Illegal. One lawyer says, I can't get you the outcome that you need. You go hire a different lawyer. Guess what? This happens every day in America. So he hires a different lawyer. From that part on, Trump and his co-conspirators now executed a strategy to use knowing deceit, or you would say legitimate election contestation methodologies in the targeted states to defeat the federal government, including as detailed below. Now they're just going to walk us through all the states. They're going to walk us through all the states? Really? In Arizona, they say Trump had a conversation with his campaign manager who informed him that a claim had been circulating that non-citizens had voted. He said, Trump, that's false. But 8 days before the governor certified this, Trump and co-conspirator lawyer number one called the Speaker of the House, made false claims aimed at interfering with the votes. Trump and lawyer falsely asserted, among other things, that there were fraudulent votes. And we've covered some of this. This was Rusty Bowers. The Arizona House Speaker asked for evidence, and there wasn't any. Nothing happened. Trump and co-conspirator one held a hearing but the Arizona House Speaker refused. And they also asked them to circumvent the process for the popular vote. And again, the House Speaker refused. So these are lawyers talking about, hey, is this something we can do? And he's saying, if you have the evidence, send me the evidence and we'll talk about it. They never sent him the evidence. On December 1, co-conspirator one, Trump's lawyer, met with the Arizona House. When they asked again for evidence, he responded, we don't have the evidence, but we've got a lot of theories. Yeah, they're investigating it. It's December. Then the House Speaker issued a statement. He said, I will not change the outcome of a certified election. On the morning of January 4th, co-conspirator number two, another Trump lawyer, called the House Speaker, urging him to decertify the state's electors. Arizona's validly ascertained electors had voted weeks earlier. The House Speaker said, no, there's no evidence of substantial fraud. The lawyer said, well, he conceded he didn't know enough about the facts on the ground, but nonetheless, he said, well, just decertify it and let the courts sort it out. Speaker refused, said he would not play with the oath he had taken. On January 6th, defendant publicly repeated the false claim that 36,000 non-citizens had voted. And I guess that's Trump knowing that it was fraudulent. I still don't see that connection. Georgia, same type of thing. On November 16th, the defendant and his executive assistant sent another lawyer and other documents, critical bullet points. Says, go all in on your suits in Georgia and Pennsylvania with a fraud claim. Set aside the entire election. They filed a lawsuit. They alleged massive election fraud. He did this. There it is. So Trump did this despite the fact, what? That when he had discussed co-conspirators' far-fetched plans with private advisors, Trump had conceded that they were unsupported and that co-conspirator number three sounded crazy. So the Georgia lawsuit was dismissed. Okay, so Trump says that sounds crazy. That means that he knew the election had been lost. He just didn't like her idea on that. Again, it doesn't mean that he thinks the election was lost. He just says that one idea is crazy. Co-conspirator number one orchestrated a presentation. So another lawyer went to the Judiciary Committee in Georgia. During the presentation, an agent of Trump and co-conspirator one falsely claimed that more than 10,000 dead people voted. A senior advisor to Trump told Trump's chief of staff through text messages. He said to Trump's chief of staff, just an FYI, his team verified that the 10,000 dead people is not accurate. It was clarified at a hearing today. The actual number was 12 dead people. Another agent of the defendant and co-conspirator one played a misleading excerpt of a video, showed workers with suitcases. And another lawyer encouraged the legislatures to decertify based on the allegations of fraud. Now, Trump also posted a tweet amplifying false claims. Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia, he said. Ballot stuffing by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave the large counting room. Plenty more on this. But Georgia's Secretary of State debunked this. He said, no, that 90-second video is showing fraud, watched entirely, just normal ballot processing. Here's a fact check. December 8th, defendant called the Attorney General, Brad Raffensperger from Georgia, to pressure him to support an election lawsuit. Another senior campaign advisor who spoke with Trump on a daily basis had informed him various fraud claims were untrue. And he said that co-conspirator one and his legal team's claims could not be substantiated. So it's lawyers disagreeing with other lawyers. Senior campaign advisor disagrees with Trump's lawyer. As early as mid-November, this advisor had informed Trump that large numbers of dead voters were untrue. Same thing with the State Farm Arena. He said, our research and legal team can't back up any of the claims. You can see why. I'll hustle to help out on my own front, but it's tough to do this on my own when it's just conspiracy stuff beamed down from the mothership. December 10th, 4 days before Biden's valid electors were scheduled to be cast in their votes, conspirator number one, at a hearing before Georgia, played the State Farm video again, saying this is just the tip of the iceberg. He said that this is them passing USB ports around, like they're vials of heroin or cocaine. Election workers got death threats after the fact. December 15th, they say Trump summoned the acting attorney general to discuss allegations of election fraud. They refuted his claims. They said that what conspirator number one was showing you was just benign. Trump's chief of staff also, this is Mark Meadows, after he personally observed signature verification process in the Civic Center, he notified Trump that they were conducting themselves well. And if fraud existed, they'd find it. But Trump said, nope, that they were hiding evidence of fraud and they were terrible people. They say Trump also called and he spoke with the acting attorney general. He pressed unfounded claims. And they say we don't have any suspicious conduct. They say Trump signed a verification affirming false election fraud allegations when he filed a lawsuit against the governor. They say Trump, co-conspirator two, who was advising Trump about the lawsuit, acknowledged in an email that he'd been made aware and that he'd been made aware of some of the allegations has been inaccurate, and that signing a new affirmation with knowledge would not be accurate. So they say Trump and co-conspirator number two caused Trump's signed verification to be filed nonetheless. So I think they're saying that Trump signed another document when he was suing the Georgia governor, that he's acknowledging that some of the claims that were brought up against the Georgia governor weren't valid. But again, you see how that doesn't mean that he knew that the election was fraudulent? You can have crazy ideas and not be deviated from your underlying belief. You can say the election was stolen from me. It wasn't stolen this way. Thank you. Thank you for that, person. Okay, it wasn't that way. It wasn't stolen that way. It wasn't stolen that way. Thank you. It wasn't stolen this way. Okay, got all of that. but I still think it was stolen this other way, and I've got some beliefs for it, and I've got a whole team of lawyers backing me up on it. And so he filed a lawsuit, and in that lawsuit, he's saying, I knew that some of the claims I'm making aren't accurate. That doesn't mean that he's acknowledging all of his claims are inaccurate. This is very dishonest. On January 2nd, 4 days before Congress's certification proceeding, Trump and others called Brad Raffensperger, Georgia Secretary of State. During the call, they say Trump lied to the Secretary of State to induce him to alter the popular vote. He raised allegations about the State Farm Arena video, falsely referring to somebody as a professional vote scammer. He says, I think it's unfortunate that your lawyers sliced and diced that video. He offered a link to another video. Trump said, I don't care about a link. I don't need it. I have a much better link. They say Trump asked about rumors on paper ballots. Trump claimed 5,000 people were dead. Trump claimed thousands of out-of-state voters had cast ballots in the election. They've been refuting that. In response to multiple other of defendants' allegations, Georgia Secretary of State told Trump that there was no merit. He said that we needed to find 11,780 votes and insinuated, what they say, is that the council could be subject to criminal prosecution if they don't find the vote. He said, and you are going to find that they are, which is totally illegal. It's more illegal for you than it is for them because you know what they did and you're not reporting it. That's criminal, you know. That's a criminal offense, and you know you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you. You're a lawyer. The next day, Trump falsely claimed that Georgia had not addressed the allegations, saying he has no clue. And then he made another false insinuation. 10,300 dead people had voted in Georgia. So they're just walking us through all the states. And they're his statements in each state. On November 5th, they say there had been suspicious dump of votes of illegal ballots. Trump made a comment about it. On November 20th, 3 days before the governor signed a certification, Trump held a meeting in the Oval Office, brought some people in there. They told him, you lost Michigan not because of fraud, but because you underperformed. They told him that specifically. But on December 1st, defendant Trump raised his Michigan vote dump claim with the Attorney General. He made knowingly false statements like this. He said at 6:31 in the morning, a vote of 150,000 votes was dumped. The batch was received in horror. Nobody knows anything about it. Another Trump lawyer in December also sent a text message to the Speaker of the House, help me get this done. December 7th, they couldn't find any fraud. He reaches out to the House leader in Michigan. I need you to pass a joint resolution. We're contesting this. Same thing December 14th. We're trying to examine these reports of fraud, but we can't find these. I fought hard for Trump, but I can't fathom any of this stuff, and I won't stand for it. Same thing in Pennsylvania. Trump publicly maligned a city commissioner. Pennsylvania's governor signed a certificate of ascertainment. Trump and his lawyers falsely claimed that there were bad returns. Same thing happens in Wisconsin. And we see it's the same story in all the various states. Now, they tell us that they have Trump using dishonesty and fraud to get all of this done. As Trump attempts to obstruct the vote, his co-conspirators developed a new plan. Marshal individuals where he won the popular vote in 7 states. Send the vice president false certifications that they were legitimate. The plan capitalized on ideas drafted by co-conspirator number 5, whoever that is. The memoranda evolved over time from a legal strategy to preserve Trump's rights, right, which I guess you're allowed to do, according to them, whatever that looks like, to now a corrupt plan to stop Biden's electors from being counted. On November 18th, there was a memo talking about what should happen in Wisconsin. There was another Wisconsin memo. This one focused on Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada. Wow, a bunch of legal memos? Wow, incredible. The plan began in early December, and ultimately the co-conspirators took the memos to the various states to try to contest the states. We need to have someone coordinating electors. Chairwoman of the RNC was involved. RNC consulted Trump's campaign and heard that work on gathering electors was underway. So the RNC is involved in this? Trump's lawyer got the Wisconsin memo, called some other lawyers. These are the co-conspirators now having phone calls. And then conspirator one says, go out there and start contacting people. They send one to New Mexico and elsewhere. They suggested that Arizona file a petition to the Supreme Court. They said it could appear treasonous for the Arizona electors to vote if there's no pending court proceeding. So this is all election mechanics. To manage the plan in Pennsylvania, the co-conspirators participated in a conference call. When they expressed their concerns about representing themselves as legitimate electors, they said that they would only be used if Trump succeeded in litigation. And they offered not to offer the conditional language. And some electors refused to participate in the plan. Okay, so when they were submitting the competing slates of electors to Mike Pence, there were some people who refused to do that. And there were some people who said, well, I want to add in a contingency language to this, which says that we will only be valid electors if there is a contest or something to that effect. So these emails go out, further confirm that their plan was not to use fraudulent electors. Instead, it was to falsely present the fraudulent slates as legitimate slates. And I'm waiting for Trump to have done this. It says Trump asked the senior campaign advisor for an update. What's going on with the elector plan? Put out a statement on the electors. Joint conferences. They told him this is a crazy play, so I don't know who knows who wants to put their names on it. And some of them would not stand by it. At the campaign staffer's request, another co-conspirator drafted and sent fraudulent elector certificates to Trump's electors in New Mexico, which had not previously been targeted. There was no pending litigation there. All legitimate electors of all 50 states and D.C. met to cast their votes, 232 for Trump, 306 for Biden. Biden won, okay. On the same day at the direction of Trump and co-conspirator one, fraudulent electors convened sham proceedings in 7 targeted states. They're now prosecuting them in Michigan. In some states, in order to satisfy the legal requirement, they went to the Capitol buildings. In other instances, they were unable to satisfy their legal requirements, but they met regardless. And some of those certificates were mailed to the archivist of the United States. Trump used those certificates to deceitfully target the government. And unlike those fraudulent electors, they were annexed to state executives. That evening, RNC chairwoman forwarded an email about the 6 contested states. Trump's executive assistant said it's in front of him. In December, Trump attempted to use the DOJ to make knowingly false claims. He met with co-conspirator 4 at the White House. Co-conspirator 4 had not informed his leadership at the DOJ of the meeting. It was in violation of House policy, White House policy. They say co-conspirator number 4 spoke on the phone with Attorney General, lied about his circumstances, and that they spoke with Trump on his cell phone for 3 minutes. Trump called the acting Attorney General and said, hey, people tell me co-conspirator 4 is great. I should put him in. They say Trump raised multiple false claims of election fraud when the AG told Trump that the DOJ could not and would not change the outcome. Trump said, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. Just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. So they're going to say that that implication means I know it was not corrupt. I think it shows that he still thinks it was corrupt. So that knowingly standard is going to be difficult to meet. All right. Now, this is quite slow. They're recounting everything we've already basically talked about. Almost nothing new here. Co-conspirator 4 sent a draft letter that never went out, saying that the identified significant concerns and we should convene these letters. Trump summoned to the Oval Office the AG, raised claims, suggested maybe we change leadership at the DOJ. January 2nd, just 4 days before the certification proceeding, co-conspirator 4 tried to get the acting AG to sign some letters. DOJ officials refused. January 3rd, despite having uncovered no actual evidence of fraud, the DOJ issued an edited version of the draft letter. As of today, there is evidence of significant irregularity is the change. Morning of J3, co-conspirator 4 meets with the defendant again at the White House, speaks to deputy counsel. There is no world, there is no option in which you do not leave the White House on January 20th. It said if Trump remained in office, there would be riots in every major city. And he said, well, that's why there's an Insurrection Act, which would later come back to be used against them. Now, also that afternoon, co-conspirator 4 met with the Attorney General. He said that he would not accept being fired by a subordinate, scheduled a meeting with Trump for that evening. They met briefly with Joint Chiefs of Staff, briefed him on this issue. Inauguration Day is only 17 days away. It's too late for us. We're going to give that to the next guy, is what he said. When the chairman and another advisor recommended defendant take no action on this issue, Trump said, yeah, you're right, too late for us. We're going to give that to the next guy. Trump then moved immediately from national security briefing. At the meeting, Trump expressed frustration with the AG for not doing anything to overturn the results. Now, they were going to send the letter to state officials, apparently, a copy of which was provided to Trump. Trump relented in his plan to replace the acting attorney general with co-conspirator 4 only when he was told it would result in mass resignations at the DOJ and of his own White House counsel. At the meeting in the Oval Office, they suggested that the DOJ should opine that VP Pence could exceed his lawful authority, and that was debatable. Trump said, no one here should be talking to Pence. I'm talking to Pence. And that ended the discussion. All right, so Trump attempts to enlist Vice President Pence. As the J6 congressional certification approached, Trump sought to get Pence's help. He did this by using knowingly false claims of election fraud to convince Pence to reject the electoral votes. After cultivating widespread anger for weeks, he said, be there. Will be wild on January 6th. He retweeted a memo called Operation Pence, which said Mike Pence could disqualify legitimate electors from targeted states. He also retweeted a memo that said Pence had a lot of those authorities. On several private phone calls, Trump repeated knowing and false election claims and directly pressured Pence to use what they say was his ceremonial role. I don't think that now it is. Back then it wasn't. To fraudulently overturn the results. On December, Vice President Pence called Trump to wish him a Merry Christmas. He said, Trump, I don't think I have the authority to change the outcome. Pence wrote notes. He says, Trump falsely told VP Pence that the Justice Department was finding major infractions. Pence said, Trump told me that. On J1, Trump called VP Pence and berated him because he'd learned that Vice President Pence opposed a lawsuit seeking guidance. Apparently, Trump told Pence that you're too honest. Within hours of the conversation, he said there's going to be a big protest on J6. He told VP Pence that Pence had an absolute right to reject the electors. Of course, he did not do that. They say co-conspirator number 2 circulated a second memo that included a new plan, which under the Electoral Count Act VP would send the elector slates to the state legislatures. Trump had a meeting with one of his lawyers, VP, Chief of Staff, Vice President's counsel. They wanted to convince Pence to do the thing. Trump deliberately excluded his lawyer from the meeting because his lawyer pushed back on that idea. During the meeting, as reflected in the VP's contemporaneous notes, Pence noted this stuff. Trump knowingly made false claims of election fraud. Oh, that's from VP Pence. What did he say? He said that Trump made knowingly false claims of election fraud. Bottom line, we won every state by 100,000s of votes. We won every state. And asked, regarding a claim of his senior DOJ officials, what about the 205,000 more votes in Pennsylvania? Trump and the other lawyer asked VP to unilaterally reject the electors. When Pence challenged that lawyer, they responded and they said, well, nobody's tested it before, which is true. VP told Trump, did you hear that? Even your own counsel is not saying I have that authority, which is true. Even your own lawyer is not saying I have that authority. He's saying you might. Nobody's tried it. And the law allows you to do that. That's what you do in the law. That's okay. I prefer the other suggestion, is what Trump had said. On January 4th, when another lawyer acknowledged that Trump's senior advisor, that no court would support his proposal, senior advisor told co-conspirator 2, you're going to cause riots in the streets. Morning of January 5th. At Trump's direction, VP Pence and Chief of Staff again met with Trump's lawyer. They now advocated that VP Pence do what Trump said he preferred, reject electors from the targeted states. During the meeting, co-conspirator 2 privately acknowledged that Pence's counsel had hoped to prevent judicial review because he thinks it would be unanimously rejected by the Supreme Court, which might have been true. Doesn't mean he couldn't have tried it. The VP's counsel expressed that following through would be a disastrous situation. Yeah, it could have been. The same day, the defendant encouraged support, or it could not have been. The defendant encouraged supporters to travel to Washington on January 6th. He set a false expectation that Pence had the authority to do that. Trump issued the following tweets. Says the vice president has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors. On January 5, Trump met alone with Pence. When VP refused to do anything, Trump got frustrated. He told the VP that Trump would have to publicly criticize him. And so VP got concerned about his safety and told his Secret Service. As crowds began to gather in Washington and they were audible, Trump remarked to his advisors that J6 was going to be, quote, angry. That night, Trump approved and caused the defendant's Trump campaign to issue a public statement. From his meeting with Pence out only hours earlier, he said, the VP and I are in total agreement that the vice president has the power to act. Which is, and I don't remember if Mike Pence corrected that. Let's see. On January 6th, starting in the morning hours, Trump again turned to knowingly false statements aimed at VP Pence. He said, if Pence comes through for us, we'll win. Many states wanted to decertify the mistake they made in not certifying it or certifying it incorrectly. Mike Pence can send it back. On the morning of January 6th, an agent of Trump contacted a senator to ask him to hand deliver documents to the VP. The agent then facilitated the receipt by the senator's staff with fraudulent certificates signed by Trump's fraudulent electors in Michigan and Wisconsin, which were believed to not have been delivered to the VP or archivist by mail. When one of the senator's staffers contacted a staffer for VP by text, the vice president's staffer rejected the electors. At 11:15, Trump called VP again, pressuring him. The VP again refused. Immediately after the call, Trump decided to single him out in public remarks, reinserting language that he had drafted earlier, falsely claiming that Pence had the authority to send the electors back to the states. Earlier in the morning, Trump had selected co-conspirator 2, another lawyer, to join co-conspirator number 1 in giving public remarks before he did. When they did so, they promoted these false claims again. Co-conspirator 1 spoke to the crowd. Co-conspirator 2 spoke to the crowd. Next, at 11:56, Trump made knowingly false statements that obstructed the federal government. He repeated the false claim of election fraud, gave false hope that vice president might change the election outcome, and directed the crowd to go into the Capitol as a means to obstruct. VP fraudulently obstructed the certification. He wanted to pressure him to do that, and he made false statements, including, he said, I hope Mike Pence is going to do the right thing. I hope so. We're supposed to protect our country. States want to revote. States got defrauded. They were given false information. That is absolutely true, by the way. They told us that the Hunter Biden laptop was fraudulent Russian disinfo. They voted. We all voted on fake info. They wanted it back. All Vice President Pence has to do is send the states back. We become president. And you're the happiest people. After Trump falsely stated that Pennsylvania legislature wanted to recertify their votes, the crowd began to chant, send it back. After extorting that we fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore, Trump directed people in front of him to head to the Capitol. He suggested he was going with them. He told them to give members of Congress the kind of pride and boldness they need to take back our country. Thousands of people marched. Shortly before 1 p.m., the VP issued a public statement explaining his role as the president did not include unilateral authority. Before Trump had finished speaking, a crowd began to gather. Thereafter, a mass of people, including Ray Epps, including individuals who had traveled to Washington, broke through barriers. Trump had returned to the White House to conclude his remarks, watch the events unfold in a dining room next to the Oval Office. At 2:13, after more than an hour of steady violent advancement, the crowd broke into the Capitol. Upon news of receiving that the individuals had breached the Capitol, Trump's advisors told him a riot was there. When advisors urged Trump to issue a calming message, Trump refused, repeatedly remarking that people were angry because the election was stolen. At 2:24, after advisors had left Trump alone in the dining room, Trump issued a tweet intended to further delay and obstruct. He said Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what he should have done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones that they were asked to previously certify. Says USA demands the truth. 1 minute later, Secret Service evacuated Pence. At the Capitol throughout the afternoon, members of the crowd chanted, hang Mike Pence, where is Pence? Bring him out, traitor Pence. Trump repeatedly refused to approve a message directing rioters to leave the Capitol. Urged by most senior advisors, White House counsel, deputy White House counsel, chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, senior advisor. Is this illegal? Instead, the defendant issued 2 tweets that did not ask rioters to leave, falsely suggested that it was being peaceful. There were a bunch of peaceful people there. Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. At 3:13, I am asking for everyone at the Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. At 3 p.m., the defendant had a phone call with Minority Leader of U.S. House of Representatives. Trump told the Minority Leader that the crowd at the Capitol was more upset about the election than the Minority Leader was. Then, at 4:17, Trump released a video message taped at the White House. He repeated the knowing false claim that we had an election that was stolen from us. We finally asked individuals to leave the Capitol. He said that they were very special and that we love you. At 4:17, after the tweet, Trump joined others in the outer Oval Office to watch the attack on the Capitol on TV. He said, see, this is what happens when they try to steal an election. These people are angry. These people are really angry about this. This is what happens. 6:01, Trump tweeted, these are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. On the evening of January 6th, Trump and Lawyer 1 attempted to exploit the violence at the Capitol, called lawmakers to convince them, based on this, to delay the certification. Trump and White House aides attempted to reach 2 state senators 6 p.m., 6:59 until 18 p.m. Co-conspirator 1 called 5 senators, 1 representative. Co-conspirator 6 attempted to confirm the phone numbers of 6 senators, calling people to delay. In one of the calls, lawyer 1 left a voicemail intended for a senator, says, "We need you, our Republican friends, to try to just slow it down so we can get these legislatures to get more information to you. I know they're reconvening at 8 tonight, but the only strategy we can follow is to object to numerous states, ideally until the end of tomorrow." So they're still making their arguments. I guess Jack Smith wants them to just say, well, there was a riot. I guess all of our arguments are now invalid. In another message intended for another U.S. senator, they said that illegal immigrants had voted at substantial numbers in Arizona. Georgia gave you bad numbers and so on. At 7:01, while co-conspirator 1 was calling U.S. senators on behalf of the defendant, White House called Trump to ask him to withdraw any White House lawyers called Trump withdraw any objections. He refused. The attack on the Capitol, they write, obstructed and delayed the certification for 6 hours. I know, the greatest attack since the Civil War, whopping 6 hours. Until the Senate and the representatives come back into session, they concluded their votes the same day. They say at 11:44, co-conspirator number 2 emailed Pence's office, "I implore you, Pence, consider one more relatively minor violation, allow us to do a full forensic audit," but that didn't happen. Pence announced and certified the results at 3:41 a.m. Eastern Time, and therefore Trump and his co-conspirators committed the following crimes. Count 2, he conspired to obstruct and impede an official proceeding. Count 3, he aided and corruptly obstructed and impeded an official proceeding, the certification of the vote. Count 4, he conspired to threaten and intimidate one or more persons in the free exercise of a right or privilege. And that's it. This is the indictment from Jack Smith. Wow. Signed by Jack Smith, Special Counsel to the United States Department of Justice. This is a lot less than what I was even expecting. Now, I'm not sure that this is going to be the end of the story here. There are a lot of other co-conspirators, and it feels like there might be another superseding indictment situation here. But they're going through the various states, and you might disagree with Donald Trump's methodology or about his aggression or a bravado or his tactics, certainly. But the question here is, what was the crime? And where is this going to go? Who are the witnesses that are going to come in and testify about all of this? They say knowing, but everything in here seems to me like Trump didn't believe it. A lot of people told him, a lot of people notified him about all of this, but he did not believe it. And he had a legal team of lawyers who were helping him to craft a defense. And so if this is not allowed in America, if you're not allowed to protect your interest and defend yourself aggressively and go to the mat on every legal case, no matter you think it's a good case or a bad case, that is the breakdown of our entire adversarial system. This type of legalese, this type of effort is conducted by every politician in this country whenever they lose. This just happened to be at a big scale involving Donald Trump, involving new novel issues, and it's being exploited for political purposes at this point. It's not even a strong case. This is all evidence we've all basically known for years. Now, this is indicative. Some people are just very thrilled about this. Peter Strzok, they were celebrating this today, said fine day for indictments. Says Trump's a given, but would totally hit one of the betting apps for parlays. We commented on this during our members only stream in the morning. Peter Strzok, of course, is a former FBI official. And so they're celebrating this, right? This is what they've been waiting for. And I remarked that this was very good evidence. This man is just indicative of who these people are. I said, these people are sick, man. Indictment gambling against their political enemies like this. It's like this is some sort of a sporting event. I said Strzok is the embodiment of the mentality and the culture at the FBI and why they're totally illegitimate. And guess what? He blocked me for saying exactly what's true. And so a lot of people are celebrating over this January 6th indictment, but as it stands right now, it feels quite weak. It's a bunch of conversations between Trump and his legal team with other people over a questionable matter, over whether there was fraud in the election. And Trump exercised the same advocacy and the same pressure that you find in any other adversarial system. But Jack Smith is going to now indict him, shatter hundreds of years of American history and precedent, because they've got nothing else. This is their campaign. Now, I would expect to see other indictments related to this and other co-conspirators indicted, and even maybe a superseding indictment. The fact that they didn't bring in seditious conspiracy, which is what they charged the Proud Boys with and the Oath Keepers with, and they've just got Trump on these obstruction charges for January 6th, this thing fell way flatter than I think they were expecting, which is good news for Trump. And every time they drop a new indictment, he seems to just get more and more powerful. It's like those monsters in the movies. Like when you shoot them, they get stronger and bigger, and everybody goes, uh-oh, this is a big problem. You mean he's absorbing our bullets and becoming stronger every single time? Yeah, that's what we're saying. So we're going to continue to cover this one. This is a big deal because he is now going to be arraigned in a D.C. Circuit Court, whenever that's going to be scheduled. And those judges there, as we've covered here in the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers cases, are a little bit off. So is he going to be held in custody? I don't think so, based on these charges. The previous argument was, how can they let him out of custody if Stewart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, with no criminal history, has been in custody this entire time? But guess what? They didn't charge Trump with those same charges. Not yet. And if he's not the lead of this conspiracy, what are all those other people doing in custody? Being a part of a conspiracy? How are they conspiring to overtake the country if Trump's not also conspiring to overtake the country? Something is out of sync here. And it's the DOJ. We know that they are an illegitimate organization. And of course, my friends, we'll continue to cover this. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video. Wherever it is you're watching this, there will be yet another indictment we're waiting for, and we'll be here to cover it all. All right, my friends. Now that we've got that done and out of the way, let's talk about somebody who actually should be prosecuted. The Democrats have a new defense now. They are saying that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, they really didn't have anything shady going on at all. It was just an illusion. All of this evidence that we have been seeing here, all of these emails, you know, those 600 plus pages in the laptop, all of that is just an illusion. You're just being fooled by those magical Republicans. Watch this. Watch this one right here. Oh, yeah, you see that? Watch this. Oh, how are we doing that? It's an illusion. All right. So that's what the Democrats are saying the Republicans are doing. Now, we've got a bunch of comments on this. We are seeing this strange little progression that is happening. Thank you for the thumb trick. I know it's incredible, isn't it? Says that Representative Goldman is now using this new defense, and we've worked our way through this various stages. They're saying that Joe Biden originally never even spoke to Hunter. That was stage one. Then there was no evidence of Joe Biden's involvement. Okay, not that they didn't speak. Okay, maybe they did speak, but there's no evidence of his involvement. We said, oh, okay, we heard that for like 24 hours. Then Karine came out and said, oh, but wait a minute. Joe is not in business with Hunter. Like we didn't form any LLCs together. Then they changed this to, but Joe Biden's not getting paid by Hunter. You know, like he doesn't have a direct deposit or there's no Venmo transactions. We go, yeah, we all probably thought about that. And then now we have arrived at the evidence is just an illusion of influence. There was really no influence at all. And there's like a second layer to all of these. And every one of these, we can layer on Joe Biden just didn't know. You know, he just didn't know. No evidence, but he didn't know. And there's no business and he didn't know. And so Dan Goldman is now out here. He had a pretty rough time being the person who was supposed to come and explain all of this to America. After Devon Archer testified, this guy drew the short end of the stick and had to go explain the bad news.
Benefit. Joe Biden did not.
And here is what he says.
With Hunter Biden. And
who Devon Archer is and what he did and did not say yesterday in that meeting.
Devon Archer was Hunter Biden's business partner from 2013 to 2016, and he was most notably on the board of Burisma with Hunter Biden. And what he testified to yesterday completely absolves Joe Biden of any involvement in Hunter Biden's business world. And notwithstanding whatever alleged smoke Chairman Comer says there is, the witness testimony was very clear that Joe Biden was not involved in any of their business dealings. Joe Biden got no benefit. Joe Biden did not change any of his actions for the benefit of his son in any way, shape, or form. That Hunter may have, quote, promoted the illusion of influence on his father, but the witness was very clear that it was an illusion. There was no actual influence, and what the evidence has shown in this entire investigation, and we keep getting witness after witness who's supposed to be their star witness showing Joe Biden's connection, is the only evidence is that that Joe Biden's official actions ran counter to Hunter Biden's interests, because this witness said that Burisma believed they had the corrupt prosecutor general, and I quote what the witness said, under control, and they did not want him to be fired because that might mean that Burisma and their president would get investigated, and yet that's exactly what Joe Biden advocated. That's the only evidence at all of Joe Biden's connection in any way, shape, or form to Hunter Biden's business interests. And it begs the question, Hunter Biden has been investigated by the Department of Justice by a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney for 5 years, including all of the foreign business accounts.
That doesn't mean that it was a very thorough investigation. It just means they dragged their feet for 5 years so that they could let all of the other prior charges evaporate away because the statute of limitations expired.
It's foreign bank records, FARA violations, all that stuff. That's the Department of Justice's job. Congress's job is not to investigate a private citizen. Congress's job is oversight, and there must be some legislative purpose, and that has to connect to Joe Biden, and there is simply no connection.
So, as you say, and we've said many times on this show, there's just been no evidence. They've been given a ton of opportunities. James Comer last night on Hannity, what's the evidence? Hannity pleading with him, show us something. Well, all we have is smoke. We don't have any fire. And you would think, as you say, over many years, they would have found it by now. Do you concede at least, though, that it was unseemly for Hunter Biden, that it appears at least 20 times there was a business deal, to just so happen to call up the Vice President of the United States and to suggest, look, Dan? I'm connected to people in high places. You want me on this deal?
Well, I think Hunter Biden has been open about that himself, that he certainly used his last name to benefit his own business interests. The question, though, is not whether Hunter Biden did anything. The question is whether he did have any influence or did have any access, and whether the president did anything to benefit Hunter. And what was clear in the testimony yesterday is that there were many.
A phone call from the vice president to people who you are selling access to you as the Biden name, that is a benefit to Hunter. The mere fact that he's on the phone, do you understand what that means? If I could get the vice president on the phone, what kind of power that is? Hold on a minute. Let me get the vice president of the United States on the phone. Like, as though that's not a benefit when you're sitting there with a bunch of people, you're saying, hey, I've got access to the most powerful people in Washington. Hire me to consult with you to get this thing done. A phone call is all it takes to show that you've got that influence. It's a direct benefit. I don't know how he can even argue that it isn't, except he's delusional.
Any instances where Hunter Biden tried to get, quote, credit for something that his father did completely independent. And the key here is that they never discussed business. They said hello. It was, greetings, niceties, salutations, small talk. It was never involved with business. And even Devon Archer said that Joe Biden has no business experience, wouldn't have known what Hunter was doing, and was not interested nor ever discussed it. And so not only was there no evidence connecting Joe Biden, but the allegations that Joe Biden lied are wrong as well. He didn't discuss Hunter's business dealings.
So, Congressman, just because it is the source
too.
of so much smoke, could you just, with specifics, tell us these phone calls that were a matter of such discussion yesterday, like what were they about? What would then Vice President Biden say in these conversations? You know,
How long
walk
were
us
they?
through what happened.
How long were the calls?
So let's put this in context. Beau Biden got very sick in early 2015.
gosh.
He
Are we
died in
going
the
here?
spring of 2015, which was right in the middle when Devon Archer had his business
Tough time
dealings
for a family.
with Hunter Biden. At that point, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden began to speak every day because they were both devastated by Beau's death. They spoke every day. The witness testified that over his 10-year relationship with Hunter Biden, there may be approximately 20 times when in one of those conversations, Hunter Biden would put his father at a dinner, not at a business meeting, at a dinner that he was having if he happened to get a hold of his father, and would ask his father to say hello to whoever was at the table.
At a business
and that was essentially the extent of it. It was unclear, and the witness testified, this is not me saying that, the witness testified that a lot of times, most of the time, Joe didn't even know who the people were.
Why would you need to
at
know?
the dinner table.
Yeah.
So this
Do you need to know somebody in order to exercise influence?
was just simply, this may have been Hunter's effort to say, hey, this is, the vice president, this is my dad.
Okay.
But the critical part here for Congress, and that's what we have to make sure we understand,
Shouldn't Joe Biden
is
have
that
done
Joe
something about
Biden was
that?
doing nothing to benefit his son.
So
A phone call from the vice president is a benefit to your son. Obviously. You have to be kind of a moron to not know that. If you're the vice president of the country, you know that. You know that if you show up in a room, it's a big deal. They leave, they charge $100,000, $250,000 to show up for speaking fees. A phone call from the vice president's a big deal.
Congressman,
And showing up at business meetings 20 times when Hunter's trying to show that they've got access.
you used the word illusion a couple of minutes ago, and Congressman Comer, your chairman, appears to be trying to sell the illusion of deep criminality that Hunter Biden participated in. You also framed up the time period of 2013
Very
through
sad time.
2016, 2017, at which point Hunter Biden is alleged to have taken money from Ukraine and other countries where he was trying to do business with, and that's the source of some charges that he failed to register with the State Department or whoever you register.
No, the charges are not that he has not been charged with that.
I know,
Oh.
but if he
Should have
were
been.
to be
Should have been.
charged by this committee or the Justice Department, isn't the statute of limitations on all of those things, isn't it 5 years? Wouldn't it be over with? They couldn't do anything?
Yeah, that's exactly why they waited 5 years to investigate him, so they would start dropping off.
Possible, but this was a 5-year investigation. I'm sure at some point they would have been able to charge him if that were the case. We saw an email yesterday that was from the hard drive, so the witness was unable to authenticate it. But in the email, Hunter Biden made it very clear that in his role with Burisma, that he was on the board, that he could not violate FARA, and he hired attorneys, he hired a lobbying firm. His role was the corporate governance and
Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. I know exactly what line he's talking about in exactly the email. I have it queued up in the next segment. Hunter puts a line in there. We're going to follow the rules exactly. And then 2 lines later, he tells Devon Archer, by the way, go get a burner phone from 7-Eleven. I'm going to do the same thing.
a lobbying strategy, but he was very clear that he did not. Now, the Department of Justice investigated that. I don't know what they found. They didn't charge him. But
Because they're corrupt, and now they're being run by his literal dad.
that's just not Congress's role. Congress's role is not to investigate a private citizen for a FARA violation. Congress's role is oversight over the president and over the executive branch. And they have demonstrated no connection to the president. So this investigation is now very clearly a complete fishing expedition that has no basis in fact to continue with it. And every witness that they bring in continues to confirm that Joe Biden had nothing to do with it. So then begs the question, why are we...
That's not what they're confirming at all. This guy is just a pure propagandist being brought out by the Democratic Party. And how do we know that? Let me just share this right now. That little liar told us that at one sentence, Hunter wrote in this email. This is an email from Hunter Biden to Devon Archer, April 13th, 2014. Hunter, I believe this email was ripped off from one of Joe Biden's classified documents that he found in his garage. But this is what Hunter tells Devon Archer. He says, to that end, they need to know in no uncertain terms that we will not and cannot intervene directly with domestic policymakers, that we need to abide by FARA and any other U.S. laws in the strictest sense of the word, of the board. Right? That's Hunter saying that. Two paragraphs later, paragraph 22, he tells Devon, buy a cell phone from 7-Eleven or CVS tomorrow. All do the same, right? These guys are corrupt and they're just hacking this whole thing together. Now, this is another representative named Jim Hines who says they really are just talking about the weather, though.
Interesting about the Biden thing, the Republicans, it's just this internal primal urge to visit retribution on the Democrats. And the problem is they can't find
You guys are literally prosecuting Trump on 3 different indictments right now, by the way.
a fact. So look, is there problematic questions about Hunter Biden? And I said something that shouldn't be controversial, which is that if you committed a crime, you should be held accountable. But have they pointed to anything to suggest that Joe Biden engaged in corrupt behavior? No. And on the contrary, Hunter Biden's business partner said, yeah, he was on some phone calls talking about the weather, exchanging pleasantries. You know, is that in the category of, you know, presidential family members that are problematic? Billy Carter, Hugh Rodham, maybe it's in that category, but it is sure and absolutely not a crime.
Not a crime, just the weather. So not even that big of a deal. Now we've got Jim Jordan and James Comer who, after the testimony, come out here and respond. And let's get this queued up. See what these guys have to say about this. That's the Joe Biden video that we're very familiar with, where he fired the prosecutor. And now we get a couple Congress people in for their reaction, including Jim Jordan.
Where that money came from.
Yeah, Sean, but it's all an illusion according to the Democrats. When we go back to that meeting that you and Jamie were just talking about, this illusion of access. They're having a board meeting in Dubai on December 4th, 2015. After the board meeting, Hunter Biden meets with Devon Archer, Zolochevsky, and Pizarski, the 2 key guys who run Burisma. They meet for drinks. During that meeting, they say, we need the U.S. government to intervene. We're under pressure from the prosecutor. We're facing pressure in Great Britain because they've sanctioned and seized our assets. 23 million pounds, $23 million in Britain. We need some help. They make a phone call to D.C. Mr. Archer, I don't know who they called, but they called D.C. And 5 days later, December 9th, 2015, Joe Biden is in Ukraine and he gives a speech starting the pressure on the prosecutor in Ukraine.
Wow.
5 days after that meeting.
Wow.
5 days after a phone call to D.C. 5 days where they used the Biden brand. According to what we've learned today, the Biden brand was the value Hunter Biden brought to this business arrangement. That took place simply 5 days later.
The brand was Joe, wasn't it?
And then, of course, we know. Yeah, the brand was totally Joe Biden, the guy with the power and the connections in D.C. Right. But 5 days after that, this
Hunter Biden is not the brand, all right? That's not how that works.
This conversation takes place, this speech takes place, and then a few months later, that clip you just played, Shokin gets fired. That's how serious this was.
Let's talk, Jim Jordan, about the brand. Let's connect this also to the 1023 form. And
well, Mr. Comer's working on it. Our staff's working on the Oversight Committee, Chairman Comer. That's what we're trying to do, figure all that out. But here's the takeaway I have today, too, Sean. I thought today's testimony from Mr. Archer gave a whole new light to what happened last week. Remember last week, this deal they put together that the judge said, no deal. We're not going to do that because it was unprecedented, never seen anything like this. The deal they put together was designed to keep Burisma out of it. Remember, they weren't going to charge for 2014, 2015 tax years. They weren't going to do the felony charges because that's Burisma money. And the FARA allegation, the FARA concern derives from this action that took place in Dubai, where Hunter Biden is talking about how can the U.S. government, they're asking Hunter Biden, how can the U.S. government intervene and help us in this situation? So now we have some more light on that terrible deal they tried to put together last week, and why the judge, appropriately so, asked questions, and it's no longer going to happen.
20 times that they put Joe Biden on the phone was to talk to...
Let's see if we got Comer, what Comer says.
Not the brand.
Well, Devon Archer testified that they were influence peddling. We've wondered what the business was. I suspected it was influence peddling, but we heard today from someone on the inside, it was influence peddling. They sold Joe Biden. That's what the business was. And Joe Biden himself talked to every single person that has wired money to the Bidens. I mean, you've got a situation here where you look at those people who were wiring the money. A lot of those people aren't the most credible people in their countries. There are a lot of people who are in a lot of trouble in many of these countries who were sending wires to the Biden family. They needed help. They needed help from the government. That's why they paid the Biden family. They were influence peddling. And what Jim Jordan just mentioned, the FARA violation, that's Foreign Agents Registration Act, we know that Hunter Biden has violated that. Even the judge in Delaware last week cited that as one reason why she rejected the sweetheart plea deal. But what this did today, in my opinion, is open the door. Did Joe Biden violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act? Because he was an active participant in at least one deal we know of with the Burisma deal. He was actively participating in doing a benefit to this foreign agent for this foreign country, and he was withholding American tax dollars in the form of foreign aid for that. I mean, this is very serious. Today took a huge step towards implicating Joe Biden in many of these crimes. We're going to continue to press forward in our investigation.
Good stuff. And I think that they're going to continue to see more lines connecting the dots there, because it is the only logical conclusion. Hunter Biden is not a gas expert. He's a crackhead, and he was in and out of institutions for a long period of time, and he was the bag man for the Biden crime family. Byron Donalds agrees. Here's what he said when asked about the houses. How did the Bidens get so much property? Rehoboth Beach, worth $5.4 million. Wilmington, Delaware, worth $1.4 million. A lot of monies being invested into these properties. They got their money a certain way. They should have gone into stocks like Nancy Pelosi.
He was able to buy these beach houses, millions and millions of dollars, is because his son was out there getting a bag for selling the family's name, basically Joe Biden's name, across the globe. Yep, there's no other way to do this. Look, I'm going to go back to my banking days on this one, Larry. Yeah. There is no way somebody's qualifying for a $5 million beach house when you're making $174,000 a year. It just ain't happening. You don't qualify for that loan, and you definitely didn't save up enough in a deposit in order to put down that much. You just didn't do it. I'm sorry. Those are the facts, America. Joe Biden was on the take, and now he's luxuriating in the fact that he was on the take.
He is luxuriating, isn't he? He's lounging around on the beach, and, he's just taking vacation all the time. But this is the Democrats creating this new talking point, the illusion of influence. Everything that you know and see, all the emails, all the phone calls, all the witnesses, it's just an illusion. It's not really happening. It's not real. It's just there. It's just a thumb. So, all right, my friends, that is what the Democrats are doing. We'll continue to cover, of course. All right, and now let's wrap it up. This is where we start to connect some dots. Devon Archer just testified, and he helps connect the dots, confirming that Joe Biden is my guy. This is a phrase that Hunter used very regularly. And we know that that's what Devon Archer said because the House committee published this on Twitter. They said, we've got some pretty interesting takeaways. We completed a transcribed interview with Biden associate Devon Archer. We know that Archer's testimony confirms that Biden lied to the American people when he said he had no knowledge about his son's business dealings and was not involved. A couple critical takeaways. When Joe Biden was VP of the United States, he joined Hunter's dinners with his foreign business associates over 20 times, in person or by speakerphone. Maybe not just phone calls. Archer testified that the value of adding Hunter Biden was the brand and confirmed that Joe Biden was, quote, the brand, and the 20 phone calls were to sell the brand, which is Access. In fact, Devon Archer admitted that Burisma would have gone out of business if the brand had not been attached to it. Because of Biden's involvement, people would have been intimidated to mess with Burisma legally. In December 2015, Mykola Zolchevsky, the owner of Burisma, and Vladimir Pozharsky, an executive of Burisma, placed constant pressure on Hunter to get help from D.C. Pressure on Hunter to go to D.C. regarding the prosecutor, Victor Shokin. We know this. Shokin was investigating Burisma for corruption. Hunter, though, along with Zlochevsky and Pozarski, did in fact call D.C. to discuss the matter. Biden, Hunter, Zlochevsky, and Pozarski stepped away to make the phone call outside the presence of Devon Archer. This raises concerns that Hunter was in violation of FARA at this time, but we're not done. Joe Biden was dialed into a dinner in Paris with a French energy company and in China with Jonathan Lee, the CEO of BHR. Then VP Biden also had a coffee with Lee in Beijing and even wrote a letter of recommendation for college for Lee's daughter. But this is where it is interesting. Archer confirmed that Joe Biden was referred to as my guy by Hunter Biden. Now that's curious because we've got a lot of emails from Hunter. In 2014, then VP Biden attended business dinners with Hunter and his associates in Cafe Milano. In D.C. with Alina Baturina, a Russian oligarch who is the widow of the former mayor of Moscow, was an attendee, and Biden's sanctions don't hit Baturina. But I want to go back to this. Archer confirmed Joe Biden was referred to as my guy by Hunter. Well, a very curious email is now re-emerging. A Hunter email that goes directly to Devon. Here's what it says. This email was sent April 13, 2014, 12:43 in the morning from Robert Hunter Biden at iCloud to Devon Archer. Robert Biden Hunter says to Devon, he writes this big email about Ukraine. He says, hey, Devon, I got to go to Houston with Bo tomorrow, my brother, for a doctor checkup. Some thoughts after doing some research. Now, I don't think that Hunter is this intelligent perfectly, to be honest with you. I think what probably happened is he got a document out of Joe Biden's garage. Some further thoughts on organization going forward. Poroshenko appears likely to be the next president. Decentralization is going to occur. That won't directly affect Burisma. It's going to result in increased gas prices. It's going to put pressure on Burisma. Pipelines in the UK are the key to all of this. There's no immediate supplier. Blah, 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 right? He's giving a big laundry list. Now, Democrats love to point to this line. They say, oh, wait a minute, but Hunter wants to follow the laws. He said that when I'm working with Burisma, he says that they need to know in no uncertain terms that we will not and we cannot intervene directly with domestic policymakers. Like, don't ask me to directly go talk to my dad. We do need to abide by FARA and any other laws in the strictest sense across the board. We're going to comply with the rules, with the law. But then he says right here, just a couple sentences later, he says also, hey, Devon, buy a cell phone from 7-Eleven or CVS tomorrow and I'll do the same so that we can communicate with each other off the record in violation of the law. This could be the break that we're waiting for. And also look at this sentence. When he's going through this contract, he's explaining why they need to hire us. He tells them, the contract should begin now with Burisma. Look, not after the upcoming visit of my guy. The contract should begin right now, not after the upcoming visit of my guy, which Devon Archer, as we know, is Joe Biden. That's Joe. So Hunter is making Joe's appearance a critical variable in this whole deal. We start the contract now so that I can start front loading. We get our money. Then my daddy's going to show up. And then he'll execute what we need in terms of influence. Contract begins now, not after the upcoming visit of my guy. That should include a retainer in the range of $25,000 per month with additional fees where appropriate for more in-depth work to go for our protection. Complete separate and respective deals about broad participation. That is Joe. Hunter confirms Joe is my guy. I'm sorry. Devon Archer confirms Joe is my guy. Hunter is leveraging my guy in his deals with Burisma. And we've got to get paid before he shows up so that he can show up and do the thing. It's a direct benefit. It's direct involvement. Hunter is referencing him. Devon Archer is referencing him. Joe Biden did show up to Ukraine and did fire the prosecutor. My guy showed up. But for some reason, that's not enough for the Democrats. Now, we're going to have transcripts coming out. Oversight Committee says that there is a process that we go through before we ultimately get them. Representative Dan Goldman wants them released. So do we. He says that we're going to go through a process where we receive it from the court reporters. We haven't yet. And then the witnesses get a chance to review it, and then we'll release it. So we, of course, will take a look at all of those when they are, in fact, released. But there were some other key bits of evidence. Here was another email where they talked specifically to Hunter Biden. Email right here. This email was sent from another party, Devon Archer, to Sean Conlon, and copying Hunter Biden. Says, hey, Hunter, so we have an engagement letter. If they get the other 10 bonds, they have a face value of $10 billion. We have an engagement letter. They're going to work with us. $10 billion. Whoa. While it's far-fetched, Devon said he talked to his professor, and these do get traded. We get 10% in fees. 10% in fees of $10 billion. That's a lot. We need to get these guys to an event or something where they get to just formally meet your dad. For follow-on, they can talk to the chief of staff. Let me know how soon we can do that. If it gets it done, more likely to get the bonds to move. Thanks for your hard work, Sean. Let's get them in front of your dad. These guys will sign. The face value is over $21 billion. We can employ different strategies to generate profits, sell some bonds and blah, blah, blah. I can't say this isn't interesting, says Devon. Still find it difficult to imagine working out, but I'm in. These guys just see dollar signs. Thrilled. More evidence of daddy. And of course, we also know that they were targeting policymakers. It's part of their efforts. This came over from Technofog. He says in Burisma, in a 2015 Burisma email to Hunter Biden concerning their final goal, the goal was targeting U.S. policymakers, like Hunter's dad, to close down cases brought against Ukraine. Pozarski says, hey, dear colleagues, I hope you're well. Thanks for the docs. You know, if this is done deliberately, I can understand the rationale. If all the parties, in fact, understand the true purpose of this BS engagement of all our joint efforts, it's okay and we should proceed. In other words, this is all nonsense. My only concern is for us to be on the same page about our final goals. The scope of the work should include organization of a visit of a number of widely recognized and influential or current U.S. policymakers to Ukraine in November to bring a positive message to not bring charges against us in Ukraine. So everywhere you look, Biden is involved in these crimes. And they keep trying to shut people up who are going to come forward and explain. This is Gary Shapley, an IRS whistleblower who's already blown the whistle, explaining that a lot of other people want to come out, but they're not able to do so because of the pressure.
You and Joseph Ziegler came out as whistleblowers and testified before that House committee. Are there others who have yet to come out who are willing?
Well, I think there's lots of people with information that can shine light on this, and House Ways and Means Committee has requested, those names. We provided those names, and the government and the people of the United States demand that the government and gets to the bottom of this. They need to talk to all these people. They can't just allow DOJ to not give access to people. I mean, for example, the FBI SSA that testified for the House Ways and Means Committee, he was given a letter the Sunday before from DOJ basically telling him not to talk. And I know that he could have confirmed additional material facts on this investigation. And he did confirm that the FBI headquarters notifying the transition team and Secret Service, but really that was the only thing that he was able to speak about. So there are so many other people, and we've provided that to the House Ways and Means Committee, and we just hope that they follow the leads and talk to the people they need to talk to get to the bottom of it, because our tax system and the American people deserve it.
Okay, Gary, thank you for your time. They may want to stay anonymous. I'm sure you took a risk coming out, and so did Joseph Ziegler as well.
No doubt about that. Yeah, so it's very interesting. There are, I'm sure, a ton of other people with a lot more evidence that will expose exactly what's going on with the Biden crime family. The question is, how do we get it out? How do we get it exposed and in front of people so that they can see it with enough time to make the proper decision at the next election? And my friends, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for joining us and subscribing and sharing this video with your friends and family. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, we covered some good ground today. Unfortunately, we've got another Trump indictment, which I think they're losing a little bit of flavor now since we've had so many of them. We've got Devon Archer confirming Joe Biden is my guy. We've got Dems now with a new talking point about the illusion of influence. Ooh. And then we had the Donald Trump indictment, which we covered in depth, read most of the full thing, and a lot less interesting than I even thought, which I'm sure there'll be more reaction on that tomorrow. We'll see the official court docket, hopefully updated, and see if we've got any dates scheduled on that one. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. This is our third indictment. We're still waiting for our fourth indictment, probably coming any day now, also out of Georgia. And we'll see what that one looks like. Of course, want to remind you about our brand new website, robertgovea.com, where you can get the daily reports and you can read what's going on, in addition to getting all of the various updates on the different segments that we covered, all here under the Reports tab. And if you want to get the mind maps, just sign up, enter your name and your email, and you'll get access to the mind maps so you can navigate literally this exact same document that we're looking at right now. But let's see what you have to say, and say hello and thank you to everybody who's supporting our beautiful work, including Dolphin Fan is the man. And this one came in from this morning. Sorry we missed you, Dolphin, this morning. Says, come on, Rob. It didn't work with Russia 2016. Now 2024, it's going to be China. And you know it's going to be Trump's fault. Impeachment, number 110. Yeah. Is it going to be China that is spreading Chinese disinformation now? I think it'll probably still be Russian disinfo, because there's no way that we're going to wrap up the Ukraine war by that time. So it's probably going to be a lot of Russian disinfo as well, no doubt. We have another one coming in from Dolphin Fan is the man. We got 5 new membos courtesy of Dolphin Fan. Thank you very much, Dolphin. Karen A. Hope Risen is here. We've got Rick O'Shea, Sweet Tat, and Tiger S. all in the house, courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man. And Red Blooded American. Woo! 10 new membos from Red Blooded American. We got Flyvelli Flo, Kimberly Bowen, Johnny Boy. We got Rose 4. We've got Annie, Johnny Commodi. We got Charles S., Kathy Bowman, Lectonic, and Tommy Seattle in the house. And thank you very much for sending those in. Red Blooded American. We got the good Dr. N.Y. Renal, MD, in the house. Says lawyers employed as such who give advice is a protected act, executive privilege. Did I wake up in bizarro earth? Says N.Y. Renal, MD. Now, I'm trying to figure out where we are here. Here we are. 2012 Jameson. Thank you, Doctor. 2012 Jameson says this indictment now allows attorneys to sue the DOJ. It's so overly broad that any attorney can be held criminally liable on any election claim. Right. Right. Anything that you do that they disagree with, and as a matter of legal substance, they just say you're an insurrectionist now. It's basically where this goes. Not great. We had another one coming in. Thank you, Jameson. Devin Knox says, weren't there also people whose families got threatened because they didn't certify the election? I think that's true. I'm sure that's true. I mean, there were a lot of people being threatened all over the place. Again, I don't know what, like, is Trump responsible for those threats? Are they charging him with a crime for those threats? There was a lot of superfluous stuff in that indictment that wasn't really relevant to the actual conduct that was alleged as criminal. There's a lot of fluff in there for the 4 charges. What were the 4 charges? And what was the actual conduct that connects to those? It was a strange indictment, honestly. Chrissy, thank you, Chrissy. I appreciate you. Thanks for the thumbs up, and thank you for being here and your lovely support. A Bad Poet says, what senior DOJ officials says, good vote, you lost? Well, I don't know. Probably people who want Trump to get out of the office, like a lot of them. A Bad Poet says, Carrie Lake, even when it's proven the machines were fraudulently certified, verified to be broken, and sent specifically to religious voting centers, they just said it was just a problem. It's just an election problem. It's just a little of a, not a big deal, inconsequential. The fact that on election day, when all Carrie Lake's voters, huge swaths of the machines broke for about 4 hours, really inconsequential. Maybe you should have mailed your votes in. Ray K, been a member for 18 months. Woo! That's like 2 babies, man. That's a lot. Thank you, Ray K, for being here for so long. So grateful. Says, no trials before the election. What are they planning? Well, we'll see. I don't know what D.C. is going to do. They might try to hold this before the election. Now that we have an indictment, we'll see when they start scheduling this stuff. There'll be a trial date set. We know that the Florida trial date is already, the Florida trial date's already May. So, my goodness. They could have a trial before the election. We don't know. A Bad Poet says, I doubt it. I really doubt it. But in D.C., maybe. A Bad Poet says, I would love to see them prove all those charges in a real court of law. Too bad it's D.C. courts and the judges. Might as well be Ukraine, minus the beatdown, which is the story we talked about this morning. Good to see you, A Bad Poet. Jameson says, hatch-act them now for being political hacks. NY says, if any of these charges stick, that's the end of the United States of America as a republic. These charges are all thought crimes. The Dems will charge Republicans with these sort of thought crimes and ignore their own party members. When a critical mass perceive the government is rigged, it's over. Yeah, I don't think they really know what they're doing. They're in this legitimacy doom loop downward spiral. They think that prosecuting Trump is going to get them legitimacy. They're losing power, so they really need legitimacy. So they prosecute somebody to increase the legitimacy, but it diminishes their legitimacy, which causes them to react, which means we got to prosecute him harder. And every time they prosecute him harder, it delegitimizes them more. And Trump gets stronger. And around we go. They're idiots. And they're, meanwhile, wrecking the country. A Bad Poet says, did they confuse Trump with Epps, who said to go? Yeah, I mean, Epps, he said he was going to be charged, but we didn't see him charged. He was a lot more aggressive than Donald Trump was. We got Catherine Rex. Says, swear jar. I said it was BS. Oh, Catherine. Thank you for the emojis. Just in case, that's a good emoji. That's like, that's communicating an emoji. Yeah, but thank you for the swear jar. And you're right. It is a cow poop emoji, and no doubt about it. SR Dempsey says, why was the law changed if Pence didn't have the authority? It seems like a further weakening of our election process. Well, I think that they wanted to just make sure that there was no way to exploit that little rule again. And Trump might have done it, and they didn't want that to happen, so they just tightened it up. But I agree. I think, look, when we were covering this, we were reading through the Congressional Research Service, and we read through all the documents. And I was also here of the opinion that Pence didn't have that authority. I thought it doesn't make sense logically. But he could have. And there's been other times in history where stuff like that has happened, and the Electoral Count Act was in response to other things, right? This is a dynamic system, and Trump could exploit, and all lawyers do, exploit gaps in the law. That's what we do. Doesn't make it criminal. And they've tightened it up. They've remedied it. I think that shows that they knew that there was a problem here. DJ Liquid Smoke says, no, seriously, doesn't Trump have Space Force? And didn't Trump sign an executive order allowing whistleblowers to go directly to him as current commander-in-chief? Trump has more info, not disclosed. Well, I mean, Trump created Space Force. I'm not sure he's still in charge of Space Force. I'm not sure if that's what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure Trump has a ton of details on a lot of the stuff that he hasn't disclosed. But it's an interesting comment. I don't know what he signed. I mean, he's obviously not the current president. So whistleblowers would go through Congress, which is where they're going now. But good to see you, DJ Liquid Smoke. We've got this one from Robert Rogers. Says he was still POTUS when these so-called crimes happened. Isn't he immune from prosecution? No, I mean, no. He could have, for example, pardoned himself before he left office for those crimes. But as a president, you don't have general immunity, but you do have the ability to pardon yourself. So he didn't pardon himself. He theoretically could have done that, and he didn't. Now, if he would have done that, they probably would have convicted him in an impeachment, and then maybe they would have precluded him from running again. So it was a precarious position. But good question, Robert. Thanks for the dono. Mark Owens, been a member for 8 months, baby. Woo! Almost ready to pop, Mark. Thanks for being here. We got Griff68 says, hey, Rob, is it true that the prosecution hasn't even finished with their interviews yet and jumped the presentation of the charges to stifle the Archer testimony condemning Biden? It's a great question. That could be why the indictment feels weak. I expect to see a superseding indictment on this one. Like, I think that they will bring another indictment, just like what we saw out of Florida. But it's a great question. I haven't heard that yet. Are they still doing their interviews? They could always add new charges and bring another one in. Good to see you, Griff. Looks like a new name over on Locals. Glad to see you here. We got Catherine says, I'm going to sue the DOJ for considering to withhold my right to vote and Jack Smith for just being a donkey. I think it's a lawsuit that you should win, Catherine, because he is a donkey, and we have all been egreged by that. Waldo says, you got blocked on Twitter. You are now an official Twitterer. And I figured it was going to be from an FBI agent. Crybabies. Jeremiah says, all these thought crimes are pure opportunity for Trump. He has always been the ultimate bait, and now that he's taking all the slings and arrows for us, and as Americans, and as America follows the trial, he'll finally be able to introduce evidence for everything, of everything the Dems and the MSM never allowed the public to see all this time. And bigger swaths can judge for themselves, as we've already done. All he needed was the proper stage. Trial of the century, like the man said. No doubt about that. I mean, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this, and I think every time he gets indicted, he gets stronger. He's like consuming their energy. Debbie says, I put a note in the comments. Thanks, Debbie. All right, we'll get to those in our Locals after party in the comments. Thank you, Debbie, for sending the tip in. We had another one from 1R5. Says, much 2020 election evidence could come out in this trial, except the D.C. judge will probably just disallow it, which is exactly right. I mean, we saw that in the Proud Boys case, they couldn't talk about their undercover informants. They just said, it's not relevant. The question is, are you a conspirator? Not whether the government is a conspirator. And they kept a ton of that evidence out, which is why I'm nervous about the DC trial. No question. Kevlar says, I watched the election on TV. It was fishy as hell. Joe Biden couldn't get the media to attend his rallies, pretty much zero attendance. I don't care who tells me it was legit. It was a strange election. It was COVID season. There were all sorts of maneuvers taking place. They were modifying election laws on the back of COVID. And big tech was censoring us. CIA was colluding with Biden campaign. It was a disaster. A bad poet says, everybody talks except the big guy. Puppet man. I know, everybody's involved except Joe. He's the most innocent person of all time. Just wandering around, eating ice cream, not guilty of anything. Rosie Posey says Goldman was pathetic. I almost felt bad for him. Not glad he was a blubber mess. Not glad he was a blubber mess when they first interviewed him, from Rosie Posey. Yeah, almost felt bad for him. He kind of was like sweating, he looked a little stressed. I think they just like, all right, it's your turn, bro. Get out there. And he did a little bit better today, but it's a long road ahead. Gigum in the house says the 2020 election was one unlike any other. The fact that laws were changed illegally in the name of COVID, locking Republicans out from election precincts, shutting down the election count when Trump was far ahead. A couple hours later, they open it back up and coinky-dink, Biden's ahead. They didn't stop counting the votes for days until they were able to turn the states to Biden's favor, and the courts claimed no one had any standing. Half the country feels the same way. Trump does. Yeah. And as the days go by, it's like more and more evidence comes out to show really what they did to alter the outcome. I mean, it's like almost without question now. Thank you very much, Deegan, for that one. Tom's here. Thank you, Tom. Tom Forsyth says the defendant pleaded not guilty, knowing full well he was guilty, and that's fraud. Great comment. Yeah, I mean, he came in here and he entered a plea of not guilty, but we know he's guilty and he knows he's guilty. So therefore he should be guilty. He's obstructing our prosecution and he's defrauding our state. Like, that's insane, right, Tom? I mean, that's a beautiful example. How dare you defend yourself? Guilty. Third proverb says, how does this guy that looks so much like Al Bundy know so much? Who looks like Al Bundy? Which guy is that? I'm not sure who could that. Is that Dan Goldman? I don't know. Good question. Third proverb. CNN guy? I don't know. Catherine Rex says, someone go get Alana Baturina over from Russia. Yeah, she's definitely not on the sanction list, so she should be able to travel, no problem. Black Pilled Red says, it's funny how Goldman always manages to stick his foot in his mouth. He said that Archer said that Joe Biden has no business experience, yet they have all these businesses to launder money. Yeah, he's just trying to get any talking points to stick. They just sent him out there. But what can he do? You almost feel bad for the guy, but not really. That's over on Rumble. Thank you, Black Pilled Red, over on Rumble. Steel Stargazer says, are you aware of Alex Soros going to the White House at least 20 times? Pray tell why. I am aware of that. I have heard that. And I don't know why. Probably because I think he's inheriting his daddy's empire, just like Hunter is inheriting his daddy's empire. So maybe they're hanging out doing cocaine at the White House, as far as I can tell. Wims is here. What's up, Wims? Says, sending some love, but got to catch you on the replay. Thank you, Wims. Well, we're sorry we missed you. Thanks for joining us while we had you. And we'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully, you're having a beautiful night over there. Rosie sends in this one. Some of the emojis didn't formulate. Looks like a sad atomic star problem or something. Thanks, Rosie, for the attempt. I don't know why it didn't populate, but thank you for the tip, Rosie. S.R. Dempsey says, this seems to add up to a conspiracy which would extend the 5 years limit, especially since social media, DOJ, FBI, DOS, Ukraine, Democrats hid evidence of a crime protecting Hunter and Joe and leading to a false impeachment and interfering in an election. Oh, yeah. You could definitely charge the like if they're like when the Republicans take over, they should charge the Democrats for all sorts of crimes. I mean, all sorts of crimes. Anytime they got on the phone with their lawyer, that's a crime. And hopefully the Republicans do it, because if they don't, they're going to lose like they continue to lose. Glenn Tellman, a member for 14 months, man. Glenn, thanks for being here for 14 months. That's a pretty serious commitment, and I appreciate that. And you've been in a shout-out level, and I appreciate you joining us. Daniel Henry says, Jack Smith forgot 18 U.S. Code 2383 charge for inciting insurrection against the United States. Since I knew that, can I get a job at the DOJ? Well, yeah, but I think Daniel, that's like a downgrade for you. I don't know. You want to do that? I don't think so. You're too smart for that. You could probably run the whole organization. But I'm also curious, where's seditious conspiracy? Where's insurrection? I thought this was the worst attack since the Civil War. It said Trump basically had a conspiracy and an attempt to obstruct. I mean, it's like they're obstruction charges. It's like, okay, thanks, Daniel. We had another one. This one is from Tuneful Cross, which is a new one over on Locals. Welcome, Tuneful Cross. Thanks for jumping in the chat. Says the indictment may backfire for prosecutors. VP Pence's constitutional authority will be litigated in court, and they'll have to examine any evidence of 2020 election issues. If they find any during the litigation, then it only helps Trump's case and his campaign. That's a real, very real possibility. And the question is the judge going to allow it to happen? How far are we going to get into any of this? Glenn Talman's here. Thanks, Glenn. Another one, Glenn. Thank you very much. Says you are amazing, Glenn. I appreciate your support. I think you are amazing, my friend. Thanks for sending that in and supporting the work that we do and for being a member. Daniel Henry says, Rob, before the election, Trump had no standing because of mootness since he hadn't been harmed. After the election, he had no standing because of latches since he waited until after the election. Act like you know the law, winky face. Yeah, there was nothing he could do. Everything he filed, it was moot, or it was not ripe, or it was latches, or it was the improper party. It was always a problem for Trump. And then there was, there's also just the general principle that the courts honored, which is that they don't interfere with that stuff. I mean, you got to have a really, really, really strong claim to reverse the outcome of an election. And they knew that. It was all done by design. They knew that there was not going to be a valid attack. That's why they did it this way. Curtis Bartle says, I'm glad America is waking up. Hang in there, peeps. We are. We have to go through some of these difficult processes for people to see how disgusting and corrupt these entities are. And now they will. Linda Ramey says, great job, Rob. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate you being here. Hearts back your way. Glenn Croy says, Rob has the best breakdowns of these cases. Thanks, Glenn. 4 months as a member. Things are getting pretty serious now. 4 months, First month's the hardest. Everything breaks down in the first month. Once we get past the second month into 4 months, we're on the right track. Thanks, Glenn. Jay Cutber says, when are the Republicans going to do anything about Biden? I don't know. I think they still have some copy paper in their offices, like a few billion reams. So they're going to draft up a few billion more letters, and then maybe they'll do something. We had this one from Wells Mortensen. Says, newbie here. Welcome, Wells. We love newbies. Says, been lurking since Epstein maps. What's your favorite drink? And does this cover one? Great job either way, mister. Well, thank you, Wells. My favorite drink is sparkling water. I mean, it's not creative. So I don't actually drink alcohol, but I like sparkling water. Sometimes I like to put little sparkling juice in there. Give it a little bit of a spice and flavor. It's like a little sugar in there. Woo! Of course, you also want to put your Field of Greens in there so that you're healthy and fortified, and you use code Robert at fieldofgreens.com when you check out. And thank you for the setup on that one. We had this one. Thank you, Wells. But this will cover certainly a sparkling water. Thanks for being here. And thanks for the amazing dono from our friend Wells Mortensen. A new one over on Locals. We're getting a lot of newbies over on Locals. And we're going to post a new welcome video probably today for our Locals members. I recorded it over the weekend. Thank you, Wells. Wells also says, this utmost ignoring of a human's value of traditional approaches of agreed upon procedures, it all betrays lack of interest in noblesse oblige approach to vested powers by any of the elites in charge. Tip to bring a bit of hope of what old world sees as Rome tripping over some barbarian sandbag. Again, what a comment. What a comment. Yeah. And some barbarian sandbag in reference to Joe Biden falling over the sandbag. It is a sad state of affairs. And I see a lot of people like Peter Strzok, almost gleeful that we're going through these criminal indictments. like it is a positive thing that's happening in our country. And it certainly is not a positive thing, but they're all gleeful about it. So thanks for that, Wells, and thanks for joining us over on Locals, and thanks for jumping in the chat. Great comment. DJ Liquid Smoke, have you looked into the continuation of government? Yeah, I mean, like if the president leaves, Kamala's next, and like that chain of command, how it goes, Speaker of the House, and then I think the members of the cabinet. It's like a complicated process. It's defined. I have looked into it. I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about, but King Ginger says Dems are going to try to steal 2024, but it won't work. They're already working on it. I mean, we've covered a lawsuit by Mark Elias, and Mark Elias is already filing lawsuits. I think we covered one in Michigan or Wisconsin or something like that, but it won't work. We got Wells says, joke's on you, mister. I hail of a country with 1,200 mineral springs, most of them sparkling water. So here's one on me. See you on the next streams. Oh, man, that sounds like heaven. 1,200 mineral springs means you can just jump in there and just swim around in sparkling water. Oh, it sounds like heaven. Well, you're going to have to tell me where that is. Maybe we'll have to go spelunking in a sparkling river. All right. Thank you, Wells. Thank you so much. Fun comments today. Rosie is here. Says, not sure why my comment didn't come through before, but here it is again. Like we had one from you, Rosie. Hopefully, I apologize if we missed one. Says Goldman at least admitted Joe had nothing to do with it. Joe had nothing to do with it. Well, Goodman just admitted that there is an it. What is it? Goldman. Good comment, Rosie. And the fact that he even acknowledges that there were meetings, that they did have conversations, I think begs the question, or just shows that even a phone call alone is enough, right? A phone call is a benefit. And so let's say hello to our friends on the X. We'll do a quick Twitter shout out because we're a little short on time. We'll run over to our Locals after party and then we'll hang out there for a bit. Do we have anybody watching on Twitter today? Let's see who's here. Is this even functional? We do. The C-SPAN review says Devon Archer testifies that Joe Biden was in on the bribery scheme. Next day, more Trump indictments. Here is an illusion. Ooh, from Fred Pedemonte. It's an illusion. Ooh, it's a Republican illusion. V says Biden lied about the influence these people will get, and yet Biden kept getting paid and is still alive. Good comment, V. Danny says, were there any dinners wrote off as business expenses? That would nail Hunter and Joe. V says, so Trump was saying the same thing about people voting in 2016. Why is this a thing now? I don't know. And V says, I wish my thumb could do that, Rob. Every time I try, things just turn into a bloody mess. Whoa, look how amazing that is. Fred says, Rob, no offense, the attorneys are some of the most disgusting people on earth. Cricket says, my husband and I, we think we figured out 4 of the 6. Rudy Giuliani, Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell, Roger Stone. That leaves one more lawyer and a DOJ official. I think it's Eastman. Might be one of them. Yeah, Rudy, I think, is 1. Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell might be 2. Roger Stone, you think he's in there as a co-conspirator? Is he a lawyer? I don't know. Good question. Good one on that. Ticking Bomb is on here, says, hey, keep up the good work. I watch almost every episode. Thanks, Ticking Bomb. And Al Holman says, don't forget the bond market rating downgrade of USA bonds. It's an additional bonus for everyone. James Laws here says, Jack Smith doesn't play by the rules. Interesting comment from James Law. I'll have to check that thread out. Looks like a good thread. Phil Reno says, in the J6 indictment, will Trump be able to find out more info on the government involvement in the riot through discovery? It depends. It just depends on what the judge allows. This is all so confusing as someone trying to learn how the legal system works. So, yeah, this is a tough case because Trump is being charged with crimes. His defense is going to be to expand the scope to encompass everything, to say it includes this, it includes that. But the government is going to say it's not relevant to your specific crimes. You've only been charged with this, this, and this, and you can't offer defenses that are outside the scope. Hey, Highland Bull says, joined up on locals today. Should have done it earlier. You've joined Barnes, Tim Pool, and Crowder. Family is back now. So listening live in the UK. Can Trump get any of the millions back if he wins? You mean that he's expended on his legal fees? No, that's not going to be able to happen. That's all money out the door. That went to the lawyers. Undocumented Republican says, will Trump be able to present evidence of fraud in every state? I doubt it. They're just going to say he can make evidence about his statements and stuff. It depends what the judge allows. But the DC judges, they narrowly tailor this stuff to only be about the charges. And so, my friends, thank you for those great comments from our friends over on Twitter. Appreciate everybody who joined up over there. And we are going to wrap it up and head on over to our locals after party to chat for a little bit further while we hope to see you there. The website with our new reports is robertgovea.com. So be sure to head on over there and check us out at robertgovea.com. Also, our members on Locals, watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where you can come and become a member. We do members-only morning streams, whether you join on Locals or join on YouTube. We would love to see you again. We also want you to go on over to fieldofgreens.com so you can be healthy and load up your cart and use code Robert when you check out so you can save 15% off with code Robert. Thank you to our mods and our meme smiths who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. Our friend Vienticus Prime, K Bean, we got Just Cause in the house, playing hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geostars, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, and John McGarvey, all in the house, keeping things nice and orderly. Thank you and shout out to Gigam Gigam, Nathan N810, and our friend Sleepy Dog Lee over on Twitter. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. But my friends, we are going to leave it there. We will be back here tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.